December 1st, 2018. CCTV cameras captured 22-year-old Grace and her Tinder date, Jesse, preparing to leave a bar they had only met at a few hours earlier. From the outside, everything appears to be going perfectly. They're laughing, relaxed, and comfortable in each other's company. So comfortable, in fact, that not long after, they re-seen heading toward a nearby hotel and making their way up to Jesse's room. No one could have imagined that this would be the last time Grace would ever be seen alive. The following day is Grace's birthday. Friends and family try reaching her all morning, then all afternoon, but no one gets a response. The silence stretches on, first for hours, then for days. It's as if Grace has vanished without a trace. Her loved ones quickly report her missing, fearing the worst. Meanwhile, Jesse is caught on CCTV moving through the hotel repeatedly, riding the elevator up and down while carrying cleaning supplies and what looks like a large suitcase. A suitcase whose contents would later horrify everyone involved. What makes the situation even more disturbing is that Jesse already has another date lined up. If police don't step in quickly, this next woman and potentially many others could end up facing the same fate as Grace. So what exactly happened that Saturday? On December 1st, 2018, at approximately 5:37 p.m., Grace leaves her hostel after finishing a long backpacking journey from England to New Zealand. She's excited, optimistic, and heading out to meet Jesse for their first date. At the same time, Jesse is already out drinking, having pre-date beers at a nearby bar. Surveillance footage later shows at least 4 empty bottles left behind on his table as he gets up to leave. They meet at a busy public location surrounded by people, which helps Grace feel safe. It's a common precaution meeting in public for the first time, but that sense of safety is misleading. Jesse has no intention of making a move in front of witnesses. He's patient, he's waiting for the moment they're alone. Grace, unaware of any danger, agrees to continue the night with Jesse. They head to another bar and drink together for over an hour before moving on again. At 7:15 p.m., they arrive at a Mexican bar for more drinks. Later, around 8:30 p.m., they're spotted at yet another venue, the Bluestone Room. This is where Jesse begins testing boundaries, slowly seeing how close he can get to Grace. At 8:54 p.m., the two share their first kiss. Shortly after, Jesse excuses himself to the bathroom. During this brief moment apart, Grace sends what will become her final message to her friends. She tells them the date is going incredibly well. She says she clicks with him and feels a genuine connection. She's excited, hopeful, completely unaware that the man she's with is about to end her life in one of the most horrific ways imaginable. The next morning, Grace's phone lights up with birthday messages. Friends send warm wishes. Family tries calling. Every message goes unanswered. The first clear sign that something is wrong appears at 8 a.m. when Jesse is seen entering the same hotel elevator, but this time he's alone. He glances suspiciously at the camera. If you think he's heading out to buy a birthday coffee, think again. Sometime during the night, Jesse strangled Grace to death. Now he has to cover it up, and he needs to act fast. Another potential victim is already waiting. By 8:07 a.m., Jesse is out in the city beginning what can only be described as one of the most chilling shopping trips imaginable. He first stops at a store on Elliott Street where he purchases a large suitcase. CCTV footage shows him carefully inspecting its dimensions, checking the width and depth to make sure it's big enough. Big enough to fit Grace's body. 25 minutes later, Jesse visits another store and buys multiple cleaning products. These items will be used to erase any trace of what happened inside his apartment. Afterward, he returns to his room and remains there for several hours. At 10:42 a.m., Jesse reappears. He soon gets into a taxi and heads to Apex Car Rental, where he rents a vehicle. What he does next places enormous pressure on police to solve this case quickly. While Grace's body lies hidden in his apartment, Jesse goes out on another Tinder date. Given that he's already bought a suitcase and cleaning supplies, investigators later speculate that he may have planned for this woman to become his second victim. When Jesse arrives at the bar, he is wearing the exact same clothes from the night before, possibly even the same clothes he wore while killing Grace. While details about his messages to this second woman remain unclear, what is known is deeply unsettling. During their conversation, Jesse raises alarming topics that immediately set off red flags. According to reports, he talks about how someone might hide a dead body from police. The conversation is so disturbing that it frightens her. The date ends quickly, and her instincts may have saved her life. It is difficult to imagine the fear she must have felt once she learned who Jesse truly was. She likely realizes that the same fate planned for Grace could have been waiting for her. At 8:56 p.m., Jesse is once again captured on CCTV, returning to his apartment carrying equipment, specifically a carpet cleaner. In his other hand, he carries additional bottles of cleaner, making sure he has more than enough to finish the job. He's attempting to scrub away any evidence of Grace's presence. 30 minutes later, the results of his effort are visible. Jesse steps into the elevator with a trolley stacked with luggage. Among the bags is the suitcase he purchased earlier that morning. It's far too heavy to carry by hand because inside is Grace's body. He can't move this much luggage on foot, which is exactly why he rented the car. Minutes later, Jesse is seen loading the bags into the vehicle. His next move is to hide the body somewhere he believes no one will ever find it. Early the next morning, at around 7 a.m., Jesse is back on the move. He stops to buy a shovel before returning to his apartment. Inside, he gathers clothing and other items, placing them aside to take to the dry cleaners. Each step is calculated, designed to eliminate more evidence of what he's done. But he isn't finished yet. Jesse stops at a random public trash bin and throws away a large garbage bag, further distancing himself from the physical reminders of the crime. He then takes the rental car in for a deep clean, paying special attention to the rear of the vehicle, the exact place where the suitcase containing Grace's body had been stored. With that final task completed, Jesse believes his work is done. He thinks he's erased the past. He thinks no one will ever know. Meanwhile, for the next 2 days, Grace's friends and family are living in agony. No one has heard from her. She hasn't posted on social media. She isn't answering calls or messages on either of her 2 phones. The silence becomes unbearable. On December 5th, Grace's family officially report her missing to Auckland police. Grace's father, David, flies to Auckland as fear turns into desperation. Standing before cameras, he makes an emotional plea, asking anyone with information to come forward. He speaks calmly, but the pain is impossible to miss. His daughter has been missing for days, and the family is terrified for her safety. The appeal spreads quickly through news outlets across the country. With the case gaining attention, Jesse almost certainly sees the coverage. He likely hears the plea from Grace's father. Yet despite the growing concern and media pressure, he says nothing. He doesn't come forward. He continues pretending nothing happened. Behind the scenes, Auckland police are already working to trace Grace's final movements. They learned that she had gone on a date with an unidentified man the night she disappeared. Officers begin reviewing hours upon hours of surveillance footage from bars, streets, and hotels throughout the city. Slowly, piece by piece, they reconstruct her last known hours. Eventually, they identify the man Grace was last seen with. They track him to the City Life Hotel. By 3:00 p.m. on December 5th, officers arrive at the building. Inside the lobby, Jesse notices them. He sees the police presence and immediately becomes alert. As he approaches the front door, Jesse attempts to casually walk away, hoping not to draw attention. But these officers are observant. They notice his behavior instantly and move quickly to intercept him before he can leave. Jesse is stopped and taken in for questioning. At this point, the smartest option would be to tell the truth. He could try claiming it was an accident and face the consequences. But Jesse has no intention of confessing. Inside the interrogation room, he believes he can lie his way out of trouble. What he doesn't realize is that police already know nearly everything: his movements, his purchases, his lies, all documented. The interview begins calmly. Jesse recounts how he met Grace, explaining that they connected on Tinder and decided to meet in person. At first, there's no obvious reason for him to lie. He describes meeting at Sky City and going up to Andy's Burger Bar, but it doesn't take long before he stumbles into his first contradiction. Jesse claims that Grace was the one who pushed for the date. But investigators already know the opposite is true. Records show that Jesse was persistent in his messages and eager to meet. When questioned further, Jesse begins offering strange explanations, claiming he wanted to meet in public to make sure Grace was real, referencing fears of catfishing. As the interview continues, police confront Jesse with surveillance evidence showing his movements through the city. Instead of coming clean, he digs himself deeper. He describes taking routes that don't match the footage. When officers point out inconsistencies, Jesse insists he chose those paths because he felt safer that way. The explanations don't make sense. His behavior doesn't line up with his words. Investigators begin applying pressure, calmly but firmly pushing him on the details. Jesse becomes visibly uneasy. An officer explains the reality of the situation. Grace may still be alive or she may be dead. And if she's dead, Jesse could be responsible. The possibility is laid out plainly in front of him. Jesse panics and asks if he's being arrested for something he didn't do. At this moment, he isn't under arrest. But police are convinced he is either directly responsible for Grace's disappearance or deeply involved. And the deeper they dig, the more evidence they uncover. It isn't just CCTV footage that implicates Jesse. The suitcase, the cleaning products. The extra night at the hotel, all of it was purchased using Grace's credit card. Investigators even believe he paid for his second Tinder date with her card. What he thought were small details become devastating proof. When police search Jesse's apartment, they find traces of Grace's blood. Combined with credit card records, witness statements, phone location data, placing them together, and the overwhelming surveillance footage, the evidence is undeniable. Jesse is cornered. On December 7th, during a second interview, police leave him with no way out. Jesse finally confesses. But what follows is one of the most disturbing defenses ever heard in court. He begins talking about a movie 50 Shades of Grey. He claims that what happened between him and Grace was consensual, that things escalated into bondage, and that he blacked out. He says he woke up in the shower and panicked, unsure what to do. As he speaks, he describes going to buy the suitcase, purchasing cleaning products, and disposing of Grace's body. He recounts driving to a remote area, digging a hole, burying the suitcase, and throwing away her belongings. Even as he confesses to every step, he insists he never intended to kill her. Police listen carefully. A pathologist will later confirm the cause of death. The injuries tell a very different story. As Jesse continues speaking, the gravity of his words begins to settle in. He explains that after realizing Grace was unresponsive, panic took over. He claims he was in shock, that nothing felt real, and that he didn't know how to react. But despite this alleged confusion, his actions that followed were methodical and deliberate. He describes leaving the apartment to buy a suitcase, returning to clean the room, and then calmly arranging plans to meet a friend for drinks afterward. Jesse tells investigators that after placing Grace's body inside the suitcase, he used a hotel porter trolley to move it downstairs. He describes loading the suitcase into the rental car and parking it in a nearby car park. According to his account, he then went back to the hotel and tried to sleep, though he admits he barely rested at all. He claims that early the next morning, around 5 a.m., he drove the rental car toward a remote area outside Auckland. On the way, he stopped to buy a shovel. He says he eventually reached a bush-covered area in the Waitakere Ranges, where he dug a hole deep enough to conceal the suitcase. He then buried it, covering the site before driving away. When asked about Grace's belongings, Jesse says he threw them into rubbish bins around Albert Park. Investigators press him further, asking about injuries. Jesse insists he doesn't remember inflicting any harm and repeatedly denies intending to cause Grace's death. He claims he was simply panicking. Despite admitting to nearly every action after the killing, he maintains that the death itself was accidental. At the end of the interview, police formally placed Jesse under arrest for the murder of Grace Millen on or about December 2nd. When asked if he's willing to show officers where the body is buried, he agrees. Days later, on December 9, 2018, Grace's remains are recovered from the Waitakere Ranges. A post-mortem examination confirms she died from strangulation. Bruising on her arms and chest indicates she was restrained and pinned down. As the case moves forward, Jesse's legal team introduces what becomes known in the media as the 50 Shades of Grey defense. The argument suggests that Grace consented to rough sexual activity and that her death was an unintended accident during intimacy. Under this theory, Jesse should not be found guilty of murder, but at most manslaughter. This type of defense has appeared in other cases, often criticized as an attempt to shift blame onto the victim. Consent to intimacy does not mean consent to serious harm or death. Prosecutors emphasize that regardless of what occurred before Grace died, Jesse's behavior afterward, his calm planning, evidence disposal, and continued dating reveals consciousness of guilt. Further investigation uncovers damning digital evidence. Police find Google searches made by Jesse before and after the killing, including searches for places to hide a body. They also discover that he took photos of Grace's body both before and after placing her in the suitcase. These details completely undermine any claim of an accident or sudden panic. In New Zealand, murder charges are not divided into degrees. There is no first or second degree. Murder is murder, and it carries a mandatory life sentence. The only question for the jury is whether Jesse killed Grace. Premeditation is not required under the law. During the trial, Jesse maintains his innocence, continuing to claim the death was accidental. But the evidence is overwhelming. Surveillance footage tracks nearly every step he took. Financial records tie him directly to the cover-up. Forensic evidence places Grace in his apartment and in the suitcase. Witness testimony paints a clear picture of his behavior before and after the crime. On February 21, 2020, the jury returns a guilty verdict. Jesse is sentenced to life in prison with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years. The court acknowledges the immense suffering inflicted not only on Grace, but on her family and loved ones across the world. But the case does not end there. After the trial, 2 more women come forward, describing separate encounters with Jesse after meeting him on Tinder. Both report being assaulted under eerily similar circumstances. Their testimonies reveal a disturbing pattern of behavior that extends beyond Grace. Jesse is found guilty on those additional charges as well. An extra 11 years are added to his sentence, ensuring he will spend decades behind bars. For many, this confirms what investigators suspected all along, that Grace was not an isolated case, but part of a broader pattern of predatory behavior. Grace Millen's death sends shockwaves far beyond New Zealand. It sparks international conversations about dating safety, violence against women, and the misuse of consent-based defenses in courtrooms. Her family continues to advocate in her memory, determined that her story will not be forgotten. Grace was 22 years old. She was traveling, exploring the world, and celebrating her life. Instead, her journey was brutally cut short by someone she trusted. While justice cannot undo what happened, the truth of this case ensures that Jesse's actions are known and that Grace's voice is heard.